Entitled jerk threatens the whole town because he didn't get to ride in a Prius. First, some info on me. I'm a 30-year-old female with several mental disorders, including autism, psychosis, depression, the list goes on. However, something to note, these do not cause me to lose compassion. In fact, they do the opposite. I'm very friendly and worry too much about others, and that often gets me in trouble. I live in supported independent housing. Most people here come from group homes. I'm a rare case in that I did not. However, I did fall into a massive depressive lap, which caused me to require some extra assistance. Things you need to know are there is one washer and dryer outside my apartment, staff is in-house for 12 hours, then on call for 12 hours. When I moved in, I was the only girl, and at first things were fine. The neighbor in the apartment down from me seemed fine. We will from now on call him Entitled Jerkhole. When I first moved in, Jerkhole was friendly. Sometimes he'd ask to borrow a bowl or something, but he was good at returning it. However, very quickly he noticed one thing. I drove a car. The model is important. I had a tiny Prius. He was too large to fit into my tiny car, and thus when he asked me super late at night for rides, I would always decline. I didn't decline just due to his size, however. Yes, it was a factor, but I'm night blind. I cannot see at night, and thus I refuse to drive late at night. This is where his entitlement starts. He went from nice to mean in a matter of seconds. Blaring loud music, locking me out if I walked out the downstairs door. Luckily, I carried a key. He did a lot of petty things like that. Soon, downstairs neighbor moved in, a super sweet lady around 65 years old, and he did the same to her. Except she used 420, so he'd ask for that instead of car rides, and I was still the only one with a car that wasn't staff. I got along great with downstairs neighbor, and she would often cook meals with me. Jerkhole would suddenly be there as soon as he noticed, begging for meals. I refused to feed him, as he never made any effort to help us with prep, cleaning, or even purchasing food. Jerkhole would dump water on the office cat and threaten to get rid of it until staff manager Lindsay, who owned the cat, gave him to her daughter when she finally moved into a safe place that allowed pets. The reason the office cat was there? Lindsay's dogs kept trying to eat him, so it was safer at the office, where he'd get more attention than with dogs that could and would chow down on him. Then downstairs neighbor's keys went missing. She thought it was odd. A few days later, they reappeared. However, she caught Entitled Jerkhole breaking into her apartment. Despite my suggestions to call the police, she declined and simply started refusing to let him come in. Finally, she had her locks changed. And then I got the dreaded sign. So basically, I had a sign on my door that people could write on. This was when I started working from home. This only lasted a few months before my mental health deteriorated and I had to quit. But it was simply to tell people when not to bug me. After I quit, it seemed okay. But then the true sign appeared. At a craft show, I found an adorable sign that said, "My cats and I talk trash about you." I thought it was so funny, I bought it on the spot and put it on my door. I have 2 cats, and thus I thought it was a good fit. I'd notice sometimes my sign would be flipped around when I got home from shopping, or when I woke up. Odd. I'd just put it back. Then Entitled Jerkhole wrote on my door, "Cause issues for me, I'll cause issues for the town." I instantly went to Lindsay and told her about it. She came and, sure enough, it was his writing. She sent images to the owner, and he told me to take down my sign. So I grudgingly did. I also removed the pen from my erase board sign so he couldn't write threatening messages to me anymore. However, he was never told to remove his Blink security sign, which was handwritten and right under his peephole. Things only escalated from there. He started turning off the only lights in the hallway. He started swearing at me if I walked past him, glaring at me, creeping up on me. He'd stand out in front of my door, and I'd see his shadow because of the tinted and distorted glass panel I had in my door. He then started messing with my laundry, and not because I left it in the dryer too long. I had just thrown my laundry into the dryer, and suddenly I would hear someone messing with the machine. Odd, I had just put my laundry in 5 minutes before, and I had a load in the washer. I go to open the door, and he's blocking it. He had taken my laundry out and thrown it on the floor, then thrown his in. Caught in the act, he quickly threw his out and grabbed it, putting most of mine back, but missing a few pieces. I got out, and sure enough, the dryer had been switched to a whole different mode, and my still wet laundry was partially on the ground. I went and complained, and again Lindsay talked to the owner. He assigned us days to do our laundry, instead of just handling this person. Friendly neighbor, a younger girl who shares my wall, had been coming out of her apartment at this time and had seen what had happened and told me afterwards. A few minutes later, he did it again. I caught him and told him to stop. He cussed me out and left. Please note, I called him out through a closed and locked door. I was not going face to face with this huge male when I'm a tiny female. Then the fire alarms started. Yes, the fire alarms. Please note that I live in a super old building. The wires for the fire alarms on the top floor are connected, so if, say, Entitled Jerkhole decided to set off his fire alarm at 3 a.m. by pressing the button, it set them off for us all. Well, at least friendly neighbor, Entitled Jerkhole, and myself. Again, I complained. And again, Lindsay and secondary staff member Sam did what they could. But after a week of no sleep, it stopped. However, my insomnia had been set off due to being afraid to sleep, as loud noises caused me to become paralyzed. Entitled Jerkhole then would wait until right before noise violations could be reported and would blare his music in bursts. Right as it hit time that I could call the police, he'd stop. This would be an on and off routine, and sadly, staff could do nothing as the owner simply said to call the police. One day, on a group shopping trip, I decided to buy us girls drinks. He was in the staff car and, being extremely rude, slamming doors, glaring at me, swearing at me when no one was around, etc., so I didn't get him one. He shoved annoying neighbor, one of the women from the lower floor, as she was trying to help me carry my food upstairs. We had gotten to the door, I unlocked it, and then he stormed down the stairs and shoved her, then slammed the door behind him. This door auto-locks, so I had to unlock it again for her. Mind you, a few days prior, he had shoved me. We didn't know what to do, so we just went on with our day. The lights continued to go on and off, and my door was nearly broken into at 2 a.m. Again, we called the owner. Again, no response. Downstairs neighbor had told me that Entitled Jerkhole had been talking about how he was a tester for God, and a lot of other unhinged things. Nothing was done. Finally, I had a panic attack. I'd never had one before, and I went to the ER. I came back and settled into my bed, slept for a few hours, then it was my laundry day. While going to put my laundry in, I noticed something. He had put his laundry in, on my day specifically, intentionally to goad me. I finally broke. I had enough. I went to ask Sam what she could do, and she said she was unable to do anything. Before people judged Sam, I questioned her further later. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid because there isn't staff here 24/7. She was afraid for me. I just wanted clean sheets, and I couldn't even get that basic right. I called the owner sobbing, explained everything. Nothing happened. My insurance called me the next day asking about the ER trip. They're sending me an emergency button. I called my conservator, Jerkhole's ex-guardian, and expressed fear for my own life, as he has become increasingly unhinged. She told me to call the cops. I had annoying neighbor call them a few hours ago. Still no one has dropped by, but we will be filing a police report. I told my doctor what was going on, and she wants my psych professional to see about getting me something to help with my fear, as I'm growing increasingly frightful as more dread is consuming me. Lindsay refuses to be around him as she's afraid of him, though she has not said it directly. You can see her tense up any time he comes around. Sam has tried to soothe me. Every female in the 6-person residence is terrified of him. Finally, we call the owner and his brother, and they're trying to figure out what to do. My mental caseworker is trying to find me a new place to live in case I cannot get him out of there. If only the story stopped there, but it doesn't. It gets so much worse. Yet despite everything this original poster has had to deal with, somehow the most jarring detail is that the so-called annoying neighbor is nothing but helpful throughout this entire story. Clearly we're missing some backstory on annoying neighbor. It's also unclear why the OP spent so much time outlining her mental disorders when she could have just said that she has 2 cats. And that truly is an important detail, as those cats will be coming up again later in the story. As for Jerkhole, the OP posted an update after a few more calls to the police. Tomorrow I am starting to fill out a restraining order against him. I've tried to cut all contact, and yeah. Today he went outside my door and started saying things about how I'm fat, ugly, and couldn't get laid. About how he's a catch. He's not. And how he couldn't pay anyone to sleep with or even force me. How he couldn't even get a dog to lay me. He used my name and was on the phone, shouting so he'd make sure even my noise-canceling headphones didn't ignore him. He's been screaming randomly between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., banging at my door. They've had to put locks over the lights to stop him from flipping them on and off. He's even popped both of one of the workers' front tires. Screwed in 2 screws so when she got home it had flat tires. Luckily, her family helped her out. We are going to do what we can, but the landlord doesn't seem to care, and I can't find new housing. I'm trying. As for other notes, annoying neighbor decided to call animal control on me. I have done nothing to her, and I take great care of my cats. She claimed I'd been mistreating them, then went to my good neighbor and bragged about lying to animal control. I swear, my life is a soap opera. Have you seen a soap opera, OP? They're practically tame compared to the drama this poor young woman has had to live through. The original poster never says where she lives, but it's hard to imagine anywhere in the world that a landlord in charge of a building for people with mental health issues would let someone suffer through this much without lifting a finger to do something about it. In any case, that's the last time I try to defend annoying neighbor. Turns out that woman isn't much better than Jerkhole. If this were a real soap opera, we'd find out they were in cahoots. They're not, but don't breathe a sigh of relief just yet, because OP is back with another update where we'll find out just how much more helpful the cops are than the landlord. Jerkhole has told another resident he's trying to get rid of me. He wants the apartment complex to himself, as he was the original here and he deserves it. I filed for a personal protection order. I was denied for not being able to prove he was dangerous enough. I called around, no lawyer will take my case. A friend is sending me a recording device, and I will be getting cameras soon. I am now in lockdown. I'm not allowed out of my apartment without an escort. I cannot even open my door without someone in the hallway, and I'm not allowed to exit without pepper spray and my emergency button. However, yesterday he tried to attack me. Please note, where I live, they dispense meds. They give us 15 minutes with staff per resident. I came in and was going over some rental assistance forms to help me get to a new place. I've been constantly putting myself on wait lists, but I was denied due to not making $2,400 a month. I make around $1,400. He came in right after me and wanted me out. I hadn't even taken my meds. When I politely told him it was my time, he started to yell. So I shut a door to put it between us and then retreated back to my caretaker. He tried to kick down the door. There's a huge mark on it, and he broke the molding around it. The police were called, and then nothing. They said they couldn't do anything. He vandalized property and tried to hurt me, and the police can't do anything. Later, when my caretaker and I were out, I got texts. He told everyone he was planning on hurting me. He was going to get even and make me pay. I was afraid. I was going to flee to Pennsylvania, where a friend offered to take me, but I had no one to get me there. I spent a night in a hotel alone without my cat as they wouldn't let me bring her. And then, upon waking, my caretaker sent me a text. I was in line for an apartment. There were 5 people ahead of me and only about 4 apartments. However, from the sound of it, 2 people are already backing out, so I am almost guaranteed this place. Shortly after I spent the night in the hotel, he was taken for a psych eval. I had 3 days of peace. My caretaker, on the other hand, did not. He called and threatened her. He demanded that the owner of the complex bail him out. On the 4th day, I got a frantic call from my caretaker. He's going to be here any moment. I just got a call warning me. 5 minutes later, I got a text from her. Call 911. Instantly, I called, and the police were there shortly. While we waited, I called her. He had pinned her in the office and was screaming in her face. When he finally let her out, she was trembling, and her voice was shaking. She was running to her car and told me to lock my doors. The police couldn't take him in since he hadn't touched us. They got a court order to grab him again for the psych eval, but 6 hours later, he was out again, released in the middle of the night. I thought I was hallucinating when I heard his voice, only for the male caretaker to tell me he'd been released. I got PPO forms printed off and had the male caretaker take me to the courts. After I did this, I told my caretaker I want her to quit. She helps me a ton with my autism and more, but I care more about her safety. I called Friendly Neighbor and told her to stay at her family's. I have PPO forms for everyone that lives and works here. We will all be filing them. Downstairs neighbor is visiting family. Annoying neighbor who tried to get my cats taken away was evicted. And the other male neighbor, who never comes out of his room except for meds, has 2 exits. He can get out safely. However, this leaves me and my 1 cat. Yes, 1 cat. I had to put down my big girl on the 14th of last month. It was so painful. I've never put down a pet before, and I hated myself. So yeah, a lot has been going on. Jerkhole has an eviction notice. However, it was dated 2 days ago. He still has 28 days to vacate. After everything this OP has been through already, now the story has a body count? This has gotten entirely too crazy. But with an apartment in the works and a countdown to Jerkhole's eviction, there's at least one ray of hope, as the OP writes what she hopes will be her final update. Well, he did do some creepy things since the last update. I'd gone to a restaurant one day. My caretaker was coming shortly after. I saw Jerkhole pestering the waitstaff that had gotten him fired because apparently he had been getting inappropriate with all the women and threatening them when he was told to stop. They told me they didn't want him there, but he's been putting on a show of force to try and scare people. The waitress was sweet and was ready to call 911 if he got anywhere near me or my caretaker. However, he didn't. Now for the juicy part you've been waiting for. He's arrested. Not just sent to the mental hospitals. Yesterday, after he went to the ER, he went into the city to go threaten the people from Jamaica that come here to work. The police had enough. They nabbed him, hopefully for good. I later got a text. I thought he was just dragged to the mental hospital. No, they booked him and are charging him. Battery and more. And I hate to say this, but he will likely hurt someone in jail. If I'm lucky, he'll be refused bail, and he won't get out for a while. Yes, I'm still moving. The landlord has proven he wasn't able to handle this situation. Hopefully my saga is finished. I can sleep in peace. I really hope for the original poster's sake that she's indeed getting a happy ending, and the comments are pretty happy about that as well. But there is one detail in this last update that points to how sad this ending really is. The OP never mentioned before that Jerkhole at one point held a job. Also, while he did threaten the entire town before, this is the first time we know of that he's literally gone out to wreak havoc on the city. The takeaway is that whatever's wrong with this man, it's been getting worse. And if you turn that around, it means he used to be better. I have no idea what specific mental health issues this man is dealing with, and I'm not sure if the OP does either. But before whatever twisted darkness took hold of this man's brain, he was most likely no different from anybody else. He was someone who wanted the same things we all want. On one hand, I hope for the OP's sake that she's right about him staying where he is, so that he won't be a threat to anyone else. But I also hope he gets help. Sadly, given how long it took anyone to do anything about the OP situation, it doesn't seem all that likely. Anyway, this was all pretty bizarre. Normally I'd ask what you would do if you were the OP, but it seems like she did everything she could. The real question is, what should the landlord have done? Can you think of a better way for him to have handled the situation? Leave us a comment below and tell us what you'd do if you were in that man's shoes.